Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As I indicated to the Board of Commissioners quite some time ago, that I would provide a report to the Board of Commissioners and to the public concerning some research that's taken place and some action that has taken place by the Board of Commissioners over the course of the last 2 years. So if you would bear with me as I read this into the record, and I will have a copy of the clerk following tonight's meeting. Approximately 2 years ago, the Board of Commissioners undertook a total review of capacity fees assessed by the Utility Department. The review was initiated primarily because of complaints and criticisms received by members of the board from citizens, businesses, and others about the methodologies employed to calculate and assess those fees, the cost of capacity fees themselves, and what appeared not to be a uniform, consistent, and a fair manner in which the fees were collected. From the outset of this undertaking, there was a realization that the research would be time-consuming and difficult at best. Capacity fees in one form or another have been collected, assessed, or granted ever since the county assumed the operation of wastewater treatment from the city of Watkinsville in 1991. Since that time, the Utility Department has seen multiple directors, privately contracted operations, and the county has seen changes in administration and its organizational structure. The earliest reference that I could find regarding capacity fees and the use of the state LT1 table to calculate sewage flows was around that same time frame. The state LT1 table, now referred to as the JT1 table, is a compilation of approximate on-site sewage flows generated for various types of establishments. It was used by the county to determine how much capacity should be reserved for each type of facility tying onto the sewer system, and also to determine if the county infrastructure was adequate to handle the combined total flows. For a number of years, the county charged two different capacity fees based upon where the effluent was being treated. One fee for effluent being treated at the LAS site on Rocky Branch Road, and another fee for treatment at the Calls Creek plant here in Watkinsville. Obviously, trying to reconstruct how and why certain things were done over the course of 20+ years was going to be a monumental task. To further complicate the research task, over the years, BOC and Utility Department policies changed from time to time. Economic development in the county was moving forward, and in some instances, capacity in an otherwise limited wastewater treatment system was used as incentives. Under one set of guidelines, the director was given broad discretionary authority over the application and collection of capacity fees. Multiple businesses were located in structures with but a single meter, and there was a practice that allowed some franchised establishments to calculate capacity fees owed based on usage from their other locations, while the small, single, independently owned mom-and-pop operations were unable to draw usage comparisons from other locations and were subsequently charged the full capacity fee rate based on the state of Georgia JT1 table. Suffice it to say that Mr. Thomas and his staff have worked tirelessly to research and try to reconstruct a history for many of the approximately 1,500 customers tied onto the county sewer system. Obviously, there were some customers for which no records were found, almost all of whom date back to the operation by the Oconee County Public Utility Authority and the City of Watkinsville. For each commercial and institutional customer, Mr. Thomas and staff tried to calculate the fee in existence at the time of connection and compare that to what was actually paid. He compared current usage to the usage estimated at the time of connection. He calculated the amount of capacity paid for and what was actually being used, and performed a number of other calculations to verify that the data that he had at hand. He also worked with Mr. Benko to verify the capacity fees collected were actually submitted and deposited correctly, and Mr. Benko could find no discrepancies in his records regarding collections and deposits. Additionally, the county's independent auditors confirmed this fact during our annual audit of the enterprise fund. Concurrently with this research, a small group of staff consisting of me, Mr. Thomas, Wayne Provost, and Rusty Haygood met on numerous occasions with members of the board to review the data collected. Obviously apparent to members of the BOC and to staff after reviewing the data, a new capacity fee policy should be developed. Staff then set about to formulate and develop a new capacity fee policy for the board to consider, with several goals in mind. That whatever was developed would be fair to all using the sewer system, would be equitable in its administration, would remove discretion on the application of the policy from the director and return all authority to the Board of Commissioners for any deviation from the policy, and would be business friendly. Hence, on the 6th of April 2010, the Board of Commissioners adopted a resolution establishing that capacity fees collected were to be based on 50% of the JT1 table, where prior to that time, 100% of the JT1 table was used as a basis. In effect, this new policy cut the amount of money charged for capacity fees by 1/2, a significant reduction in the cost of doing business in the county. That policy also established that the owner of the structure was responsible for any payment of capacity fees, because the owner of the structure is the individual who ultimately benefits from the guaranteed availability of sewer for his property. Later, on the 12th of October 2010, the BOC further amended this resolution by adopting a policy whereby capacity purchase for a structure that is designed with the capability of housing multiple establishments could be transferred within the structure, and further allowed for the refunds of capacity fees if the actual usage deviated by more than 25% from the original JT1 calculation for capacity, provided that the capacity was purchased after April 6, 2010, the date of the original adoption of the policy. This again provided options to businesses that were not previously available to them. Lastly, on the 4th of January 2011, the BOC again amended the policy to provide for refunds for residential sewer capacity within certain parameters and guidelines to be followed. Suffice it to say that BOC has come to know more about sewer capacity fees, and the financing of small limited systems than I believe they had ever initially intended to know about. This subject was and remains a complicated issue, especially dealing with incomplete records from many years ago, a system that is relatively small, limited in treatment capacity, and has changed management and structure numerous times in the past. But what the Board of Commissioners has done, in my opinion, is significantly improve the system that we have, made it far easier for businesses to operate and maneuver on a level playing field, and made it far less expensive for businesses to locate and operate in Oconee County, all while maintaining a financially stable operation that is totally self-sufficient, and all without the use of a single property tax dollar. This is, however, not the end of this research, nor the end of monitoring or tweaking of what we have in place. Mr. Thomas and his staff are continuing to review data generated by our new data log meters in an attempt to make further improvements in the capacity fee system. We fully anticipate that our relatively new policies will require additional amendments in the future to serve the ever-changing needs of our customers. Commissioners, I'll be more than happy to answer any questions you have. I thank you for all the time that you put into this. Especially want to thank Mr. Thomas and his staff for the hours upon hours of research put into this entire issue.
I would also like to say, had it not been for Chris helping some commissioners understand a little bit about the operation of the sewer plant, we probably wouldn't have been able to ever make some of those corrections. And also a particular citizen with a mom and pop restaurant at least having trust in us to work on something. One of the things, Alan, if you went over this is another key part, I think. The issue, the check and balance, that where finance also plays a role, where previously, if there was an assessment made, correct me if I'm wrong, finance wouldn't have necessarily known that an assessment was made, so they wouldn't be looking for an accountant.
Oh, absolutely. I think what has transpired over the last couple of years has certainly been the checks and balances. And I'll also add in that both the planning department and code enforcement department have played a role in this. Here before, Commissioner Luke and Commissioner Hort, primarily the driving forces behind this. Before that time frame, there was not necessarily interdepartmental communication about who was tying onto the sewer system, if the fees had been paid properly, and all those other checks and balances. So bringing about this new policy with all the players and having open communication, I think it's made the system work so much better and more equitable and more business friendly.
Anyone else like to make some comments related to sewer capacity fees?
No, thanks for your work.
I'd like to say I was one of the ones who spent some of those hours with Chris and Alan, Jeff. Everybody worked hard on this. Frankly, we had a mess. I'm very proud of Oconee County and most of its functions. But in that process, working our way through there, I found that you can be a real good county and still have some areas that need some help. And I am very pleased that we've gotten this to the point now where I think I'd be willing to have any other county come in and take a look at how we do that. And I think they'd be very pleased with it. Theriault again, so thanks to you. I think it's been a long process. But I think we're where we need to be, or almost where we need to be on that now. And again, I think we're very proud of what we've